I'm in Japan right now. I cannot believe I'm saying this because this has been in the works for almost a decade, and I'm currently living in Tokyo as a full-time language school student studying Nihongo, which is Japanese in Japanese. I'm gonna go way back and explain in detail how and why I got here, as well as some key lessons and takeaways that I learned along the way, as well as some that I'm kind of learning right now. Less than 1 year ago, I was working yet another corporate job, overpaying for my apartment in Los Angeles, and just kind of becoming disillusioned with all of it. I've always wanted to come to Japan ever since I was a little kid obsessed with Godzilla and samurai and anime and video games, and honestly, I didn't even know what Japan was, but it turns out a lot of my favorite things came from the same place. I'm gonna talk more in detail about why I chose Japan in another future video because that's gonna just elongate what's already gonna be a very long video, so subscribe if you want the full story there. This video is about the events that took place and the lessons I've learned over the last decade-ish that have propelled me to this point. So over the years, coming to Japan has taken on many forms, from like a 1 or 2 week vacation to like a 30-day travel course thing, and I think in summation, there's been like 5 separate times that a Japan trip was in the works. Right now, I'm towards the beginning of what will end up being a 6-month period of living here and traveling the country. I first got the idea of what would become this experience all the way back in 2017. I was fresh out of college and I had just landed my dream job at a dream company for me, doing exactly what I wanted to do and had studied for. But I hated it. Honestly, it was not the job, it was my boss at the time, and I won't recount the details, that's not really the point. But suffice to say, I was really struggling internally with how I could be, like, on paper working my dream job, but in reality just despising my daily experience. One of the first things I took away from all of that is that cognitive dissonance is very real, and dreams and expectations don't always line up with reality. At the same time, I started to have a little bit of regret for not doing a full study abroad semester in college. So many of my friends who had done it just raved and raved and raved about it, and I don't even know if I could have afforded it at the time, but it was just on my mind. So here I was, hating the fact that I had just went straight out of college into a corporate job that was slowly sucking my soul, and I just started to pour myself into research on how to best get out of this. And on a whim, one of the things that I started to research very heavily was a study abroad course in Japan. And just due to my hyperfixation sort of personality with these sorts of things, I got very far in my research. I was already narrowing down schools to apply to. I was formulating a plan and a budget and looking at accommodations. However, it was not the only ball I was moving forward. I had asked to transfer teams at work, and it took a little bit of time, but I was given an opportunity to shift over and work for 2 amazing individuals who helped get my career and passions back on track. From there, I just kept focusing on my career, and eventually I did make the jump over to an entirely new job where I continued to grow and got very lucky with another incredible boss and mentor. Because I was doing what I loved and working with an amazing team, this trip just slowly started to fade into the background. Then COVID hit. The world shut down, and due to shifts in the business or whatever, my workload increased to just an unsustainable level. And despite the best efforts of my boss and my team, I just started to really struggle managing all of it. And that's about when I started to pick this trip back up again and started to go back in and look at all my notes and kind of formulate a new plan. However, this time it was like a bit more complicated because I had begun to establish my career and I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and so there was just like more variables and financial considerations. So I made a plan for myself. I was gonna get promoted, save up for 2 years, and then find a way to take like a short sabbatical from work and make this trip happen all in the span of like maybe a month or 2. But like last time, this was not the only ball I was moving forward, and eventually I did change to an entirely new job again. And again, I started to really love what I did. The difference this time was that I always thought this Japan trip was going to be the end goal of whatever I was working towards at that time. So something definitely shifted like internally. I knew that I was going to come here eventually. So even though this time it was in the back of my mind as an end goal, I encountered even more change. My relationship at the time ended, so I felt like I needed to stabilize myself a bit, and so I focused in on work because it kind of provided a bit of an anchor for me while things were a bit unsteady. Another takeaway I learned from that experience is it's hard to focus entirely on your future when things are really unsteady in the present. And so it's really important for me, at least, to ground myself before I can really start thinking and dreaming again about my future goals. However, around a year later, I was on pretty stable ground again, and two major things happened. First off, due to business circumstances, my job responsibilities shifted again, and I was doing things that were just incredibly boring to me, like spreadsheets and just stuff I just did not sign up to do. And I just felt very uncreative and unmotivated and uninspired. And again, it was like through no fault of my boss. It was just like one of those things that happen at like a corporate job where business needs change and you just end up working on stuff that's just like completely out of your purview. And with some notable exceptions, because there was some really cool creative stuff that I was still doing, I just became so dispassionate. The other thing that happened was I was having some really good conversations with two of my really close friends. One friend had recently upended his life and moved to Montreal, and my other friend was like digital nomading, just kind of traveling the whole world, and I had some really good talks with them. Through these talks, I was encouraged to just finally freaking do it. Another big lesson emerged here for me, and it was something that I was already kind of working on in therapy, and that's just like so many things in my life are out of my control, especially in the corporate world. And while in the past I would try really hard to find some sense of control over the situation or have a very strong reaction, and I did have like a strong reaction, but it was much easier for me to step back and just respond in a very different way. And I suppose one of the main takeaways is that it's really nice to just be able to take a step back and look at my life and be able to say, what can I influence? And then exercise my agency over those parts of my life. So I set a personal start date to work back from, and over the course of the year, I started to formulate a much more hardcore plan of how I was going to make it all happen. So I was still trying to advance my career and do my best work, but at the same time, once I hit my budget goal, I was going to start looking for the best way to exit. Somewhat fortuitously for me, but also sadly at the same time, my company underwent sweeping layoffs that were just brutal. I was having really complicated feelings at the time because it was just so hard to like see coworkers that like were actually killing it and so good at their jobs just being cut for like literally no reason, no fault of their own. But at the same time, I was also grateful that I ended up being included in the layoffs because I was able to kind of take a step back, reflect, kind of think about everything, and eventually fully pivot into making this dream a reality. I didn't have as much saved as I planned, but with my target dates in mind, I just threw myself into planning the rest of this trip. And as a bonus, I was able to spend a lot of time with my amazing girlfriend and my family, and that just kind of helped me really ground myself in advance of this move. So obviously that was a lot, and trust me when I tell you, I am only scratching the surface, but I do have some other thoughts and reflections and things that have kind of come up over the course of the journey, and especially right now. This one's a bit broad, but one of the things I realized is just like this hustle grind set that is very common to see on like social media and that you hear a lot from like older generations and stuff. It's not the most healthy thing in this day and age for a variety of reasons and for a variety of circumstances. Full credit to whoever said this because I definitely heard it on the internet first, but I think the idea of work-life balance that we talk about so much is a bit of a misnomer. Like, I do not really think that you should be working more than you're living, and balance kind of implies you're doing the same in both. To be clear, I still think having an income, having a career, having a purpose, and like making an impact, I think that's all really important. I just, for me, don't think it should be as all-consuming as to get in the way of what I want to do with my life. If nothing else, it feels to me like the balance should come from whatever your career or purpose or income or whatever is, that it should directly feed into your life and help make your life better and help you pursue your dreams. So that's kind of where that balance comes from, or needs to come from. And for me, I think there's definitely some way to like make that work. And it's funny because even in my limited time here, I've started to see the Japanese concept of ikigai really coming into play here. So many people have such a passion for what they're doing and they clearly love it. And I have it here on the computer just so I don't mess it up. But the idea of ikigai is that you find your purpose by discovering what you love, what you're good at, how you can make an impact, and how you can make a living. And so if you can like achieve all of this and have a purpose, but at the same time also live your life and they feed into each other, like that's like the dream, right? And by the way, I am very aware of the notoriously difficult and brutal work culture that many Japanese citizens face here, especially in certain industries. So that's kind of just another weird juxtaposition of dreams versus reality. It's not like a widespread countrywide thing here, but yeah, I like the idea a lot. And so while I loved the actual craft and creativity that came with what I did, it was just so demoralizing to see like the art of it minimized so heavily in such large corporate environments. It also seemed just incredibly rare for someone to be able to navigate that industry and that world and also be able to have experiences like this one. So it is very scary to put down or pause a career that I have invested so many years into. And I'm really grateful to like a lot of people who reached out to me after the layoffs. And trust me, I was tempted to jump to another job to just have that like place of security, but I'm really thankful that I didn't. And it is scary to not have that income security net or PPO health insurance, although healthcare out here is pretty good, so I've heard. So that's a long, long way of saying what I've learned is that whatever direction my life heads in after this, it is really important that whatever my career ends up being, it also allows me to live the life I want and feeds directly into that. So all of this has me thinking a lot about one, how I can incorporate Japan into my future, but also like how my skills and talents can serve me and how I can find a job that serves me rather than just purely serving my job. But I'm not gonna worry too much about that right now because again, one of the lessons I've learned is how important it is to just stay grounded and present with the experience that I'm having right now. And while there have been many parts of this experience that have been way more challenging than I expected, more on that in probably another video, this is the first time that I'm in Japan, and this will be the only first time that I'm in Japan. And I'm trying to be very mindful of that because even if I were to have an experience a lot like this in the future, and even if it was Japan again, and I hope it would be, it would never be the same as the experience that I'm having like right now. And so I really want to be grounded and mindful and just appreciative of that. And I want to be able to take all of these things and all the lessons I've learned and all the experiences I'm having and eventually apply them to my future, but when the time comes. And lastly, what I said earlier about dreams and expectations not always being reality, while that is true, what I've learned is that what is also true is that depending on the circumstance and how much agency I actually employ, I can make my dreams into reality as well. If you made it to the end of what I am sure is a very long video and a very long story, thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow along more with this journey, feel free to hit the subscribe button and let me know if you have any thoughts or comments or feedback down in the comment section below. And while you go down there, feel free to drop the video a like. It helps the channel out. Thank you again, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.